High-profile hearing on Capitol Hill this week. In fact, it'll take place tomorrow. This time, the AG, Jeff Sessions, goes before that same Senate Intelligence Committee, apparently to answer questions about the Russia matter. But how far will he go? We await to see on that as we say good morning. It's Monday. Hope you had an awesome weekend. I'm Bill Hemmer. Welcome here to America's Newsroom. And you?
We're rejuvenated and ready to go. And it's going to be a busy week. I'm Shannon Bream. Sessions hearing coming just days after former FBI Director James Comey's bombshell testimony before that same committee.
Remember now, Sessions recusing himself from the Russia investigation back in March. That left the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein in charge of appointing the special counsel to lead the probe. All of this coming amid calls for President Trump to testify under oath. He said on Friday he'd be happy to do that. And Kellyanne Conway answered that question just this morning.
We heard that Donald Trump is not under investigation, never was. All the media who said he was and that he misunderstood Jim Comey are yet to apologize. There was one little retraction. That there is no evidence of obstruction of justice or collusion.
Chief White House correspondent John Roberts is live now with more. Good morning, John. Of course, the question is, do we really think the president's going to testify?
Shannon, if I could offer you just a little bit of advice, I would not hold my breath for very long waiting for the president to testify before Congress. Though, as you pointed out just a couple of seconds ago, the president did, in the Rose Garden on Friday, offer 100% to tell his story to the special counsel Robert Mueller. The White House, meantime, trying to get back on message this week. It's Workplace Development Week. The president will be going to Wisconsin tomorrow to promote jobs in the economy. The president tweeting out late last night, quote, "Great numbers on the economy. All of our work, including the passage of many bills and regulation-killing executive orders, now kicking in." Daughter Ivanka Trump will be joining her father for Workplace Development Week, says that he's feeling good in the wake of James Comey's testimony last week. Listen here.
My father felt very vindicated in all the statements that he's been making and feels incredibly optimistic. But, you know, at the White House and throughout the administration, we were incredibly focused on the reason we all went to Washington and what we're fighting for. So last week, while it didn't get the level of headlines that will ultimately have a much more important impact, was Infrastructure Week.
But the president still hasn't let James Comey's testimony go. Over the weekend, tweeting, quote, "I believe the James Comey leaks will be far more prevalent than anyone ever thought possible. Totally illegal, question mark, very cowardly." And the Comey Russia investigation will be back in the headlines later today and again tomorrow in preparation for the Attorney General Jeff Sessions' testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Still unclear at this point whether he's going to testify in closed session or open session. He is expected to be asked about his interactions with the Russian ambassador to the United States, Sergei Kislyak. We know of two meetings that Sessions had with Kislyak that he failed to disclose, but he says those were during the normal course of business as a senator. And there are reports of a third meeting at the Mayflower Hotel a year ago, April, when the president was delivering his foreign policy speech. James Comey, in the closed session before the Senate Intelligence Committee last week, seemed to allude to those meetings. However, a spokeswoman for Jeff Sessions insisting that at no point during that whole affair at the Mayflower Hotel did he meet with Kislyak. He says they might have been in line or something together, but there was never any meeting. There were never any significant words that were exchanged between the two. Shannon?
Yeah, those are important distinctions. Anyway, you referenced the first daughter, essentially a senior advisor to the president, Ivanka, out there selling the message this week. But it sounds like for her, Washington has been a bit of a wake-up call.
You know, Harry Truman said it best decades ago when he said, if you want a friend in Washington, buy a dog. I mean, Ivanka Trump is obviously a veteran of the dog-eat-dog world of business, but the level of vitriol directed toward her father really kind of has taken her aback, in particular, the way it's hindered his ability to get his agenda through. Listen to what she said a short time ago.
It is hard, and there's a level of viciousness that I was not expecting. I was not expecting the intensity of this experience, but this isn't supposed to be easy. My father and this administration intends to be transformative, and we want to do big, bold things, and we're looking to change the status quo. So I didn't expect it to be easy.
Again, the president looking to get his White House back on message. He's got a meeting with the cabinet today, but given the events that are coming up later on this week, Shannon, we'll see how long that lasts.
We shall. All right, John Roberts live at the White House. Thank you.
Meanwhile, the chairwoman of the Republican National Committee making the case that Congress should be focusing their investigation efforts elsewhere.
I'm calling for an end to the investigations about the President Trump's campaign colluding with the Russians. There's been no evidence of it. I don't think that should continue. Of course, we need to figure out what Russia did with regards to the election. The president has said that. But not yet do you have a single senator saying that there is definitive evidence that there's been any collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians. That needs to stop.
So that with Chris Wallace on Sunday. Byron York, chief political correspondent, Washington Examiner, Fox News contributor to analyze this. And Byron, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Specifically, she's saying drop the investigation on collusion. There's nothing there.
Well, this is wishful thinking on the part of the chairwoman of the RNC. It just is. She has a point in the sense that it appears that so far the investigation into collusion, which used to be the key question in all this, has turned out to be a dry hole. But it's pretty clear the investigation has taken a sharp turn into being an investigation into alleged obstruction of justice by the president. And if you listened to the questions from the Democrats at the Comey hearing last week, they were almost all about obstruction of justice. So that's clearly where at least the Democrats want to take this investigation.
Washington loves an investigation, right? Rarely do they shrink, let's say. Newt Gingrich was teeing off on the whole Bob Mueller, James Comey relationship. Listen to what he said on Sunday also.
Comey said, I deliberately leaked through an intermediary to create this counsel, who happens to be one of his closest friends. Then look at who Mueller's starting to hire. I mean, these are people that, frankly, look to me like they're setting up to go after Trump.
So he went on and on about that. You wrote a piece late last night. Is Mueller conflicted or not? Is that an issue in Washington, D.C., where those legal circles get so small, Byron?
It is indeed, and if you talk to lawyers of great experience, you'll find some who say yes, he is conflicted, and some who say no, he's not conflicted. But the fact that we have here is that James Comey has emerged as the star witness if there is an obstruction of justice investigation. He's the witness to all of these events, and by the way, he's kind of the victim as well because he was fired by the president. James Comey happens to be a very good friend of the special counsel, Robert Mueller. They've been described as brothers in arms. So the question here, the conflict question is, should the special counsel investigate this case in which the star witness is a very good friend of his? You'll find lawyers who will say one or the other, but you're definitely going to hear more about this, I think, in the future.
Let me squeeze in another one. Lindsey Graham's taken an entirely different approach on this. He says Loretta Lynch should testify when he said this.
You had Comey suggest that the current U.S. Attorney General and the former Attorney General were playing politics with the investigation, Lynch and Sessions. That needs to be in our committee. Let me tell you this to the American people. If the Attorney General's office has become a political office, that's bad for us all. So I want to get to the bottom of that, and it should be in judiciary.
The Democrat, Dianne Feinstein, was in agreement on that. Will that happen?
Pretty much. This is what we said earlier. Investigations in Washington do not shrink. They expand. And I think that what James Comey said last week about his interactions with the then Attorney General Loretta Lynch, that she asked him to kind of go soft and rhetorically on the Clinton investigation, not call it an investigation, call it a matter instead. I think that's got a lot of people asking more questions. So this Trump-Russia investigation has turned into an obstruction of justice, which is also flowered into more of an investigation into Hillary Clinton. That's what happens when the investigation machine gets revved up in Washington.
Yeah, the machine with a capital M. Thank you so much, Byron York.
Thank you, Bill.
Analysis on this Monday. Shannon.
Well, as you saw, John Roberts reporting just a minute ago, Ivanka Trump speaking out this morning about life in the Washington spotlight. The first daughter appearing on Fox & Friends today to talk about her role as her father's senior advisor and the criticism her family has faced since President Trump took office.
I think some of the distractions and some of the ferocity was I was a little blindsided by on a personal level. But for me, I'm trying to keep my head down, not listen to the noise, and just work really hard to make a positive impact in the lives of many people.
You know, she talked about the fact that she feels like there's more paparazzi or more attention on her now in Washington than it was walking the streets here of New York. She talked about trying to find some different routes outside of her house, but she lives in a neighborhood with the Obamas and a lot of other prominent people, so paparazzi's not going away.
Her comment about sizing up the amount of criticism was very interesting, but she'll be in Wisconsin tomorrow, so now we see the emergence of the first daughter on this. And, you know, follow the economics of this administration. The president wants to put the focus on jobs and the economy, and is tweeting a lot about that on Sunday. So that's where they're going, and whether or not the American people go with them, we shall see.
We will.
That's right. 10 minutes past the hour. Here we go. Big hearing on one of President Trump's biggest promises, rebuilding the U.S. military. House Armed Services Committee takes that up later today. And later this hour, the chairman of that committee, and a big fan of getting more money for military spending, Mac Thornberry is our guest live on that, Shannon.
Plus a new theatrical production getting a lot of political attention. Why Shakespeare in the Park is in some hot water for its portrayal of the president. Howard Kurtz will weigh in on that, and Republican leadership voicing concern over the health care overhaul.
American people, and that's something I can probably vote for. If we bring forward something that doesn't repeal Obamacare and doesn't bring down the cost of health care, that's probably something I won't be able to vote for.
That there is a critical member of the Senate. Republican Senator Mike Lee on the divisions on health care. At the heart of this debate, how much money to spend on Medicaid? What about federal subsidies? Stephen Hayes, senior editor-in-chief for the Weekly Standard, that's a promotion, and a Fox News contributor. How you doing, Stephen? Good Monday morning.
Bill. How are you?
To you. I'm well. I think what I heard from Senator Lee and Rand Paul as well is give us a chance to repeal Obamacare and then we can talk. That's
I think that's right. You know, I think that's right. I think you're hearing increased concern from Senate Republicans, Senate conservatives about the direction of the negotiations over what the Senate version of the ACHA is going to be. I think there was a hope from conservatives like Rand Paul, Mike Lee, Ted Cruz, Tom Cotton, and others that the bill would actually shift to the right, that it would bring down Obamacare taxes or dismantle Obamacare infrastructure, that it would lessen the amount of time for the Medicaid expansion to survive. And what we've seen is, in fact, the bill headed in the other direction. I think they're concerned about that.
Okay, next week this thing's going to really gain steam. And so our viewers need to have this on the radar. And Republicans have about that much room to lose people like Mike Lee or Rand Paul possibly on a vote, right?
Yeah, two votes. They can lose 2 votes, and you've got a handful of people who, you know, even while the House was going through its back and forth on what was going to happen with the ACHA, you heard senators saying, you know, conservatives in particular, the ones I mentioned, saying we want nothing to do with this. That bill leaves in place the structure of Obamacare. It's Obamacare light. We want something that actually repeals and replaces Obamacare, which is what Republicans have talked about doing for the past 7 years. I think it's the case that if they don't get that, or something approaching that, or something that they can argue is a step in that direction, these are the kinds of conservatives who aren't afraid to vote against their own caucus and aren't afraid to hold things up.
Yeah. Frame it in a political sense, because what I think the message from the White House now is to paint Democrats as obstructionists. You know, the president tweeted about that the other day. Mike Pence was talking about it over the weekend when he said the following, too. Here's the vice president.
Literally every single Democrat in Washington, D.C. would rather let Obamacare continue to collapse and put an enormous burden on the American people than help President Trump and Republicans in the House and Senate bring health care relief to hardworking Americans.
So can they take the obstructionist argument, label it on Democrats in the Democratic Party, and win on it or sell it?
No. What the Vice President said there is absolutely true. And if you're looking at where to cast blame for the problems that Obamacare is facing, that we're reading about on a daily basis today with Obamacare, you would certainly point to the Democrats. Is it the case, however, that Republicans can point to Democrats as obstructionists who are keeping Republicans from doing what Republicans would like to do, what the White House would like to do? Of course not. As we just discussed, Republicans have the votes in the Senate to do this if they can come up with a deal that pleases both the moderates and the conservatives. Now, that may be something that can't happen, that they don't succeed in doing, but it won't be because Democrats are blocking it.
So that's the case. What does Mitch McConnell do? What hand does he play?
I don't know. He's tough. I think he made a good decision early to include some conservatives in these negotiations, Mike Lee and Ted Cruz among them, so that they were at the table, that they could be making these arguments. Something that didn't happen, by the way, in 2013. Mitch McConnell's among the best vote counters and arm twisters in the recent history of the U.S. Congress. If anybody can get it done, he can get it done. But you have a moderate faction going in one direction, asking for basically retaining some of the key elements of Obamacare, and you have conservatives who are saying we ran for 7 years, saying that we were going to get rid of this monstrosity. So
repeal and replace, right?
Yes, exactly.
You could put that bumper sticker on the forehead of so many there in Washington. Thank you, Steve. More to come.
Thanks,
on
Bill.
that. Stephen Hayes there in Washington, D.C. Thank you, Shannon.
Well, the Trump administration making it clear wants to focus on jobs.
There are 6 million available American jobs. So we're constantly hearing from CEOs that they have job openings.
Ivanka Trump joining the effort to spread that message as the economy emerges as a bright spot for the White House. We're going to take a look at some of the numbers. Plus, check it out.
Penguins again are the Stanley Cup champions.
Francis, our experts on these things, and more. Good to see you this morning.
Good to see you.
Okay, so let's take a look at the markets as well, because let's see how far they are up under the Trump presidency. We've got a graphic there showing you across the board, big numbers up. How much is this about optimism and expectations moving forward versus performance so far?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there are two big things at work here. Number one is the idea, we heard this during the election, that they believe that President Trump understands business. He knows how to make money himself, so that's good for people out there who want to make money. Even, you know, we all talk to people who maybe didn't agree with all of his politics, but were hopeful about financial issues and voted on their pocketbook. So we see a lot of optimism out there on that front. Let me tell you what I'm hearing behind the scenes from people. So I'm hearing things like job openings are going away because they're getting filled, that there's competition to hire things like tellers. I hear bank executives talking about how they have to pay up for the good quality people to be out there because everything across the board is picking up. And we're also seeing more hiring based on that optimism. But Ivanka hit on a really powerful point. Those 5 million or so jobs that we have across the country that are not getting filled because no one has those skills. So many of them are technical. And she's talking about the fact that we need a program in this country where people train for vocations. We don't do enough of that. We have so many people out getting a liberal arts education that they're not going to use. There's nothing wrong with a liberal arts education if you want to do something like we do. But if your skills are really technical, you may want to train for a job that really exists, and that's something that we need to do in this country. The Trumps have talked about that a lot. It makes a ton of sense. We see in other countries like Germany. It's something that we have to start doing, and probably when I talk to CEOs about this, they think it probably comes from the private sector, and it's like a job, a company that has a lot of needs in an area might go to the local college in that area and set up the training there and train people there to come work for them. Maybe in high schools, maybe in colleges, junior college, whatever it is. That's the way we might see this develop.
Yeah, we know she's going to be out on the road talking about those things, visiting those kinds of programs this week, and encouraging people that the four-year college degree isn't the right experience for everyone because there are different needs, as you said, with the economy. The president has emphasized quite a bit rolling back regulations. That's something that encourages a lot of folks in the business field as well. And we also have a look at some things happening in the energy sector, the number of oil rigs that have been up under President Trump, because we know this was very different under the Obama administration, the way they handled energy issues. You can see...
Meanwhile, the tech sector, a big sell-off on Friday. Apple and Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, several other companies lost about $100 billion in market value last week. So that was after a significant run-up over the past 6 months. So we'll see where we go today, down at the open here at 9:32.
Attorney General Jeff Sessions getting ready to testify on Capitol Hill. He's going to appear before the Senate Intelligence Committee to answer questions about the Russia investigation. That is tomorrow. Comes less than a week after former FBI Director James Comey's high-profile hearing. He testified that former Attorney General Loretta Lynch asked him to downplay the probe into Hillary Clinton's emails. He said the request made him feel queasy. The ranking Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee says Congress does need to look into that.
I would have a queasy feeling too, though, to be candid with you. I think we need to know more about that. And there's only one way to know about it, and that's to have the Judiciary Committee take a look at that.
Let's bring in Katie Pavlich, editor of townhall.com and a Fox News contributor, and Marianne Marsh, former senior advisor to Secretary John Kerry. Good to see you both.
Good morning. Happy Monday.
Good morning to you as well. I want to play a little bit more sound that comes from Kellyanne Conway in reaction to what we heard from the senator there, and then we'll get your reaction.
I think what Senator Feinstein as a Democrat did is very refreshing, because the Democrats, now they basically say the word Russia more than they say America. They are obsessive about this, they are obstructionist, and they're going to have to go home and face their constituents at some point when they say, what was your message? They have no message, no direction, no leader, no compunction whatsoever to try to cooperate with this White House.
So, Marianne, a bit of a compliment there to Senator Feinstein, but some advice, some criticism for the Democrats?
Look, I agree with Senator Feinstein. Bring Loretta Lynch in. Let's find out what she said, what happened. Was it a matter of semantics, or was there something more there? Let's find out. I have no problem with that. But let's be clear. What Loretta Lynch did and what Trump and Sessions have done couldn't be more different. I mean, after Bill Clinton was on Loretta Lynch's plane, she removed herself from making any decision about anything having to do with Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, after the meeting went public.
Yes. Right, but she did that, okay? So she gave up any right she had as Attorney General to determine whether Hillary Clinton would have charges brought against her. Instead, she said, I will accept whatever Jim Comey recommends. And on 2 occasions, in July, in October, he vindicated Hillary Clinton twice. Now, it's clear he wishes he had the evidence to indict her in a court of law. He did not, and he tried to indict her in a court of public opinion in that July press conference. But it's clear to everybody, especially after his testimony last week, that if he had the goods on Hillary Clinton, he would have indicted her. He did not. And Sessions, on the other hand, has said he's recused himself from the Russian investigation, but instead he played a first-hand role in firing Jim Comey over his investigation into Russia. So this couldn't be more different.
Well,
and last point,
Katie here.
hold on, Trump.
Okay. Let's get Katie a chance to respond to some of that, because there's a lot there. Yeah, but we're also going to hear from the man who authored the memo that was given to the White House just before the president fired James Comey, and there's been some debate and some confusing mixed messages about how much that memo factored in. But Katie, we're finally going to hear from Sessions under oath, and we don't know if it'll be publicly or privately tomorrow, right? But it matters what he has to say.
Well, this is about to go from a he said, meaning President Donald Trump versus the former FBI director James Comey, to them versus former Senator Sessions, Attorney General Sessions' testimony and what his version of the events are. And it's all going to come down to what the consistency is. But responding to Marianne about what Loretta Lynch said and her saying she would accept the recommendation from James Comey, well, sure, she would accept it so long as it was called a matter and not a criminal investigation. There are very serious questions surrounding what her role was, and as Shannon mentioned, that meeting on the private jet in Phoenix, Arizona wasn't something that she was ever going to disclose. They got caught on that plane, and so for her then to act like she did a service to the country by recusing herself, which wasn't a full recusal, was her forced hand. She didn't do that voluntarily, and so I think it's good that Senator Feinstein believes that there's a lot of politics that have gone on in the Justice Department and the FBI, and in order to get to the bottom of that and to rid the system and to rid those institutions of politics, we have to see both sides of it, even if it means bringing former Obama officials under oath in front of Congress.
Well, okay, and now there's this question about whether President Trump himself would testify. He said on Friday during this presser with the Romanian president that he would 100% commit to giving his story in sworn testimony, essentially talking with special counsel, who knows what other format. Katie, I want to give you both a bite at this, but Katie, I was wondering what the White House staff was thinking at the moment that he was saying that, because now the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer's like, great, come on down to the Senate, we'd love to do it.
Well, this is kind of like saying you have maybe tapes of James Comey's conversations with you and then not releasing the tapes. Is the president saying that he would testify 100% under oath going to be something he follows through with? I'm not sure, but certainly here in Washington, people are interested in that testimony.
Yeah, quick final word to you, Marianne. Do you think it happens?
At some point, Donald Trump will be under oath. answering questions about his involvement with Russia and his decision to fire James Comey over his investigation into Russia, which is Donald Trump got caught in a shakedown of James Comey in the White House, which makes Bill Clinton's visit on a plane look quaint by comparison.
All right. We got to leave it there. Katie and Marianne, always good to see you both.
Thanks so much. Always.
So the Pittsburgh Penguins are your Stanley Cup champions. They refused to hand that cup back over. Captured their second straight championship. The Pens took a 1-0 lead with just about
First family now all living under the same roof. Melania Trump and son Barron have officially moved into the White House, staying at Trump Tower until now so that the 11-year-old could finish the school year. The First Lady tweeting this quote, looking forward to the memories we'll make in our new home, #moving day. Take a look at Melania Trump's new view. It's not too shabby there. If you've been to the White House, you've seen that. And it's so hard to remember that he's 11 years old. That is a tall young man.
Yes. What did that T-shirt say? It said
the experts. You've got one of those, right?
A lot of 11-year-olds would probably consider themselves experts in just about everything. So reunited at the White House. Cool shot there. The House Armed Services Committee will hold a special prime time hearing later tonight on plans to bolster the U.S. military. Headlining that testimony, Defense Secretary James Mattis, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Joseph Dunford. The chairman of that committee is Mac Thornberry out of Texas. And sir, good morning to you, and thank you for your time. This is important stuff given the action of ISIS all over the world, and also given the loss on behalf of the U.S. Army over the weekend. What can you add on what happened there in eastern Afghanistan where 3 soldiers lost their lives?
Well, needless to say, this is a tragic loss of some outstanding soldiers, and we all grieve with their families. There will be a full investigation to determine exactly what happened and why. As you know, there are press reports saying that maybe one of the Afghans turned against the Americans. This was a tactic that we saw a lot of a few years ago. We, with the Afghans, tightened down screening, and these number of incidents have really declined, but there may be something to be learned here, and so we ought to study it. I think your point is the key one. As we tighten down on ISIS in Iraq and Syria, they are moving out to other places, and they are also trying to carry out more attacks to show that they are not finished. So you see what happened in Britain, you see incidents like this. I'm afraid we're going to see more terrorist incidents in the future, which is why it's so important that our people are over there fighting them there rather than have them bring those attacks here at home.
There. This is eastern Afghanistan, mountainous area along the border with Pakistan. Rob O'Neill, Navy SEAL, was talking about that. Just listen to the end of his comment here and for this very specific point he makes.
They've been fighting there since before our country was even a thought. Yeah. And they're going to continue to fight there. I mean, maybe can we get a stable government in the cities, possibly up in Kabul, maybe in Kandahar, maybe. That's a Taliban stronghold. But in the valleys and stuff, we're not going to, it's a different world over there.
A different world over there. He's suggesting that you can't ever bring peace to that part of Afghanistan.
Well, I'm not sure we have to bring peace. What we do have to do, though, is prevent it from being used as a terrorist base against us. Remember, there was a reason Osama bin Laden set up shop there. It's the same reason ISIS is moved there. And so our challenge is to fight ISIS, to help the Afghans do a better job of fighting ISIS. Understood. We don't have to make it all perfect, but we've got to make it better.
Yeah, the reason you came on today was talk about your hearing. You've got 2 great guests, you know, Dunford and James Mattis. What do you want to know from both of those men?
I want to know how well the administration's budget request meets the security needs of the country. And so you look at 2 things. One, we were just talking about. What are the threats that we're facing? And secondly, what's the state of our military? I think President Trump during the campaign promised exactly the right thing, to rebuild our military, to make sure the men and women who fight have exactly what they need. I'm concerned, however, that the first budget that his folks have sent over do not keep that promise. They do not fulfill the specific objectives he has said he wants to do.
Wow, that must be disappointing to you. You're suggesting the budget sent to you on the Hill does not match the words of the campaign?
Yeah. No, that's true. Now remember, until just a few weeks ago, there was only one Trump-appointed, Trump-confirmed person in the Department of Defense, and that was the secretary. So all of this has been slow in getting people in place, but essentially what we've got is the Obama budget plus about 3%. And so we're going to go through some specifics, I think, in the hearing tonight about what the president talked about whether this budget fulfills that pledge or not.
All right, last point. Wall Street Journal, I encourage viewers to check it out. This is the opinion piece you wrote over the weekend. You state that only 3 of the Army's 58 brigade combat teams are ready to fight later tonight. In other words, the Air Force is 1,500 pilots, 3,000 mechanics. The fleet is older and smaller than ever. And pilots today get fewer training hours in the cockpit than during the dire days of the 1970s. You look at that, sir, and you think, wow, what's going on? Is it that bad?
It is that bad, and actually in classified session it's somewhat worse. And the truth is both parties and both executive and legislative branch bear responsibility for this. My key point is this is the time to turn it around. 2018, the budget we're working on now, this is the time to fix our planes, our ships, to take care of our people, and to turn this around. If we don't do it now, it's going to be hard to see when it does happen.
We just had 2 sentences there back on screen. This cannibalization has diminished American readiness. The